Okay. First time going live on YouTube. I've done many lives in my life for television stations and news outlets, but this is the first time that I go live on YouTube and it's 2026. It's been a long time coming. So I'm kind of praying that nobody watches this video. And part of me is also just hoping that what I communicate today adds value for the good of all and to whoever is going to see this video. I'm going to be speaking about the fear of being seen and the fear of being heard. And I'm going to share a little bit about my background in journalism. For those of you that have been following my journey since the news industry, since the beginning of my on camera process, lives, and just life as a journalist in the news industry, to when I decided to quit back in 2020. I've been giving myself permission to live many experiences since quitting the news industry. And quite honestly, the Diaries of a Journalist and the intention of these videos have been an idea that I've had in my mind for quite some time. And it's one of those dreams that never really goes away, and it just keeps bugging you and bugging you and bugging you until you actually do it. And I've thought about this for almost 3 years or a little bit more. And you would think that being a journalist and having experience on camera and having all the tools in my toolkit to go live on air and to speak and communicate about my personal life, my personal experiences should be easy. And the reality is, it is not. Oftentimes, what we come to teach in humanity is also the medicine that we need. So, as I am guiding others and teaching others to voice their heart's truth on camera and to release all the fears of being seen and being heard authentically as they are in front of an audience or in front of the camera, there's also fears that I'm navigating within myself. And there's layers and levels to it. It's like peeling the layers of an onion. Yes, I am most likely more advanced than a lot of the population because I've made it to spaces where only the top 1% of humanity has been in. And those are spaces like the White House, like Capitol Hill, institutions of power like United Nations, governmental institutions where there's global leaders like presidents of countries, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Justin Trudeau from Canada, Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, Iwan Duque from Colombia, Tuto Quiroga from Bolivia, presidents from Ecuador, you name it. I've been in those rooms. I've also been in rooms with Jeff Bezos and sharing stories with, the pioneers in our world today. And so, yes, I am an expert at being on camera. And also, I also get to work through my fears of being seen and being heard authentically as I am. Because my mission in life is very much to communicate from my heart and communicate my truth and my perspective and the way that I see the world, and sending those prayers out in ways that move humanity forward to a better future, and that possibly plants seeds of inspiration for others to also voice their truth. And so, with that said, the Diaries of a Journalist is born out of my own personal experiences in the news industry. And I am going to speak about depression, post traumatic stress disorder, and the side effects of the aftermath of being a journalist covering, natural disasters, covering mass shootings, covering high intensity breaking news constantly, almost every single day when I was in the White House. and the toll and the impact that that takes on your nervous system, and the path that I've gone on to heal myself, to heal my nervous system, to heal my body, to heal my communications, and the way that I have began to express myself differently after understanding the toll and the impact that fear based, control based, or manipulative based communications can have on the human psyche. Mm, and I experienced this personally after going down the rabbit hole of a healing path of plant medicines, one of them being the medicine of ayahuasca and the medicine of jahe. So I'll start with that. I'll start with the impact of communications from a fear-based standpoint, which is much of what the news industry does, covering constant tragedies and traumatic events, or the worst of humanity, and leaving very small room to also cover the best of humanity and the pioneers that are building a new earth and building new templates to move humanity forward and guide humanity forward to better structures, better governments, better institutions, and better communications as well. The main three pillars for power are business, communications, and politics. And so, based on those three pillars, the more that we each allow ourselves to stand in our truth, myself included, and it has taken me a long way to get here. And this is what the Diaries of a Journalist is about. And I'll share more vulnerably on my path as I continue these episodes. But the intention of this is to basically not fight the old systems and not criticize them and not blame them or shame them, and rather to ask ourselves, how can we become pioneers of the new earth, and how can we co-create an earth and a world that we dream of living in? And that starts with ourselves. How can I become the temple and the body that wakes up every morning feeling and allowing myself and giving myself permission to build the life that I dream of, to live the life that I dream of, and to wake up in gratitude because I am living the life that I dream of. And the main purpose of this initial introduction to the Diaries of a Journalist is to speak on the fear of being seen and the fear of being heard authentically as I am, and to guide you into stepping into that aspect of yourself as well, to give you permission. Not that you need permission, but if you haven't given yourself permission yet, then here is an external permission slip for you to step into that for yourself. And a reminder that you don't need a permission from anyone outside of yourself to do what you want to do and to create and build the life of your dreams. And also, sometimes we need to hear it in someone else to allow ourselves to stand in that power. And that is the purpose of building in community as well. And so, going back to the fear of being seen and the fear of being heard authentically as we are on camera, I, after quitting the news industry, faced my own challenges and my own pain in coming to really hard realizations of the ways in which I was part of the problem and the ways in which I was communicating from what was my truth back in 2020 and the years previous to that. So I don't want to judge myself and old versions of myself for living my dreams and living in my truth in that moment. And I have recognized that we are humans and we are allowed to evolve and to change over time. And so, after quitting the news industry and going down this path of healing and spirituality and really wanting to find my true essence and my soul and a higher purpose, I was confronted with all of my shadows and all of my pain, and a lot of that was situations of abuse and how I allowed abuse, and not only in the news industry through words and sexual harassment, um, but also in relationships with partners. And I'll get more into details on that later down in these episodes. But I faced those patterns of abuse and those shadows, and then also realized how I was a part of the problem in the news industry, and how my language, because we were communicating from a space of fear or control or manipulation or hardcore breaking news, and just basically only showing part of what we were experiencing in that moment, and maybe not, because we're one person, one journalist sharing a story at a time, we can't cover all aspects of humanity. So also like doing our best to cover kind of all sides of the story, but that wasn't always the case. And what the audience ends up seeing is what we are able to do in a very limited amount of time. So our schedule normally consists of 8 to 10 hours per day, where we go out the day of to find the stories, to find the interviews. So in the same day, we get to find the story, we get to call up all our contacts to interview them, to share the stories, and go live on air for anywhere between 1 to 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 newscasts or news shows in a day. And sometimes we end up doing at least 14 live shots in a day. There was times in the news industry where at least doing at least 8 live shots during the day. And so that's 8 different times that we get to find different interviews within a period of 8 to 10 hours in a day, and share different stories. So taking that into consideration, I know the news industry and the media has taken a toll and has taken a lot of backlash from the audience. And also, I just kind of want to let you inside the world of a journalist, so you also understand and have deeper levels of compassion for what we experience. And even though the news industry has a lot of room for improvement, and after quitting, I began Media Healers, where I interviewed more than 40 plus journalists and experts in the field and in the industry to share their own personal experiences and to see how we could better improve the news industry as a whole. I realized that that was part of me that wanted to kind of save an industry that was dying. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to save anyone. I don't want to save industries that are dying. I think that anything that is dying is because nature is cyclical, and because we are allowed to die and rebuild ourselves and have rebirths time and time again. I mean, think about it, every morning that we wake up, we are constantly waking up and birthing ourselves anew from deep sleep. And every day is an opportunity to step more into the world that we dream of, and the world that we dream of becoming and living in. And so with that said, just to give you glimmers and glimpses of the life of a journalist, and inviting you into deeper levels of compassion and understanding, so that when you see somebody that is covering the news, because I know a lot of journalists, including myself, were harassed or assaulted in one way or another while we were covering breaking news or live news, to just ask them how they're doing, you know? Be that kind-hearted human that says, "Hey, I know your industry is hard, and like, how are you doing? How can I support you? How can I support in building the communications of the future so that we can all become great stewards of communications?" And One of the stories, and I have many, and I'll be sharing them along these videos as well. But one of the stories that is coming to my heart to share right now was a time when I was covering a very difficult situation. I believe it was a homicide. And I used to work as a one man band. So, what that means is the news industry, because they are uh, essentially dying and going through a deep transformation, um, because humanity is also going through a deep transformation and fear based communications doesn't really work any longer. They had to figure out ways to cut down on costs. And some of the ways that they were cutting back on costs was with the journalists that would go out into the field. So that means that one journalist alone going out into the field live on air would literally be their own cameraman, their own editor, their own scriptwriter and storyteller, their own producer, finding the stories and the interviews of the experts that needed to share their perspective or their point of view, and then also looking beautiful and amazing and perfect in front of the camera so that you could go live on air. Mind you, that wasn't always the case because oftentimes, like, we were literally covering school shootings, massacres, homicides, um, natural disasters. I was covering hurricanes anytime that they would hit the United States, and stories of sexual abuse or sexual harassment or domestic violence. It's just a very brutal reality that I was living in. And I got to witness the worst of humanity and the best of humanity. And so one of these stories that is coming up to share is during one of these homicides, and um, I was about to go live on air, and there was a man that had been watching me from the other side of the street. And I could tell that he was watching me. I could feel it in my body that I wasn't fully feeling safe. And I chose to prioritize the live shot in that moment. And I chose to prioritize my career and my job over my safety and my life. And that is a selfless act that now I have a different level of understanding and know that I would make a different choice. And back then, though, my career was my life, was my purpose, was my passion. And I constantly put myself in situations of risk or danger to tell a story. And this was one of them. And so this man eventually started coming closer and closer, and it was 4 to 3 minutes before I went live on air. And I remember I had to tell my producer, there's a man standing right in front of me in the camera. I'm going to turn the camera around. Please start recording. Because at that point I was uh, by myself, recording myself, getting ready to go live. And so what we do is we put our IFB in our ear, and through my cell phone, I would speak to the newsroom. And I was speaking to my producer and one of the photographers that was inside the newsroom, and I told them, I'm going to turn the camera around. Please start recording, because if anything happens to me, this is the man that is standing behind the camera, intimidating me. And I feel like about to get very close to sexually harassing me or sexually assaulting me, and I don't feel safe. So we need to move on with this live shot. We need to do it now. Like, whatever you need to do to move me up in the newscast, do it so that I can leave this space and go into my car and go back into the station. And that is what I did. I turned the camera around and I recorded the man, and the man immediately like placed his hand on the camera and tried to like push the camera away from me. And I turned the camera back around to me, went live on air as the man still stood behind the camera, started smoking a cigarette and blowing the smoke into my face. And immediately, as soon as I was done with the live shot, turned the camera back around to him again, acknowledged him, and said, I'm gonna leave. Thank you for being here. Like, goodbye. And I was very diplomatic and polite as much as I could be in that moment of distress, and ran into my car and locked myself into the car and just started bawling. and called my partner at the time to share what had happened and where I was. And then I think I went to a different location to record the live shot for the 11 p.m. newscast. And so situations like that, uh, unfortunately, I experienced more often than what I would like to have experienced. And the purpose of me sharing stories like this one, and there's more to come because there's plenty where that came from, is, to inspire you to speak your truth. As hard as it was for me in that moment to speak my truth and to ask for help and ask for support, um, looking back and, hindsight 2020 is, it's really easy to say that you would make a different choice when I am sitting in the safety of my home right now, going live from my computer in my room in a safe space versus making the choices that I did back then when I was in a moment of distress, covering a very difficult news story, going live on air and having all these different stimulus and different stressors and factors that just altered my states of consciousness and guided me to prioritize my career, which was my financial security, my purpose, my passion, and everything versus my life. Because if there's no me, now that I can see that, there would have been no life shot. There would have been no career. And I think that very selflessly, a lot of journalists are constantly putting themselves in situations of risk and danger and jeopardizing their lives for a passion, for a career, for a purpose, for a story, or simply because they're scared to stand up and say no to their bosses, their news directors, their producers, because they are constantly under a lot of pressure to share the stories and to go live. And so, my intention is to inspire you to prioritize your life, to inspire you to place healthier boundaries, and to inspire you to really honor your body and the signs and the wisdom that it holds. Because anytime that you can sense that something is wrong and you can feel that something is wrong, you don't need proof and you don't need concrete actions to know. You just get to know that your body holds the wisdom and holds the key to read the energy, to understand your environment. And even though you can't put it into words in that moment, or you might not be able to express it, it is alerting you of either you need to leave, you need to place a boundary, you need to take care of yourself and prioritize yourself, or, whatever the circumstance is, you need to just simply remove yourself from that situation. And so that's one story of many, and that's my piece of advice and what I've learned after going down a rabbit hole of healing, ayahuasca ceremonies, mushroom ceremonies, therapies, um, and also realizing, I think one of the biggest impacts that quitting has had on me is how do I rebuild myself? How do I rebuild a new identity from my essence and not from what the news industry tried to mold me into becoming and shaped me into becoming? Because the stories very much oftentimes had an editorial line, and there was certain guidelines that we needed to follow to go live on air. There was certain um, there was certain structures that we needed to follow to go live on air. And so rebuilding myself and getting to know myself and my true essence has been a journey. And I continue becoming and I continue learning to know myself every day through different people that come into my life and mirror that back to me. And also, I decided to start this series because I realized that I have so much wisdom and so many stories to share that want to be shared, and that this venom and resentment and rage that I was feeling towards the news industry or the people that didn't support me back then when I was in situations of danger, I realized like I no longer want to hold on to that, and I want to release it from my body, from my system, and share these stories with the intention that maybe if you're going through something similar, this will be able to support you and to help you in also letting go of all the pain and all the suffering that you're carrying. Because I know that I have been holding on to a lot of pain and suffering, and much of it has been from my lived experiences. And much of it has also been from my lack of understanding back then as to how to better protect myself, better tend to my body, and place better boundaries as to what feels good to me and what doesn't. And I'm getting better at that. And it is something that I want to continue cultivating in my life and moving forward. Because I've also noticed that for people like journalists or like, first responders, um, the stress that we carry and the responsibility that comes with responding to tragedies or running towards tragedies constantly is huge. And I definitely faced moments of deep grief and depression, and moments where I couldn't even get out of bed and felt heavy and felt um, like there was really no reason for me to exist or to live. And I didn't want to live in many times in my life, especially with a lot of the stories that I covered, and especially witnessing stories of sexual abuse towards children. Those also had a huge impact on me, and I'll share more on that later. So there will be daily videos of the Diaries of a Journalist with my personal stories, my personal truth. I will leave a lot of names out of these stories just for the purpose of not shaming anyone and not defaming anyone, because again, this is my personal experience of the way that I lived my life in the news industry, and the aftermath and the side effects and the toll that came from that experience once I quit. And in my next videos as well, I'll also be speaking about relationships and partnerships and relationship dynamics, and how much of an impact if um, journalists or first responders or people that were living high stress or high intensity lives with the responsibility to tend to many tragedies, how that can really take a toll in your relationships, especially in partnership, and especially with your loved ones like your parents or your siblings. I know for me, um, one of the biggest challenges has been being more compassionate and loving towards my mom, because she is very compassionate and loving towards me. And also, she also gets a lot of the worst of me, and she also gets a lot of my sass and my tantrums or my pain and my suffering. And it's not fair for me to project that onto her because I have unresolved trauma um, that I'm still integrating and that I'm still processing and digesting from my lived experiences. And with that said, I also encourage you to ask for help. I know that for me, it was very difficult to ask for help in many occasions until I finally did. And I also started going to a lot of therapies. And to know that you can always change and you can always become a healthier human if you choose to do that. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because your lived experiences, your pain, and your suffering, I like to say, and I really truly live by this, is the more darkness that you have experienced, that darkness is equivalent to the amount of light that you came to hold on this earth. So as you expand the capacity for your nervous system to hold more depth, to hold more shadow and meet it with compassion and with grace and with love, you also hold the capacity to expand your nervous system into more light and to expand your body into more light. And a reminder that our loved ones and the people that we love the most and that are closest to us are usually going to be the ones that generate the biggest triggers because they know us the best. They know our patterns, they know our dynamics, they know, our routines, they know what we do, what we don't do, what we like, what we don't like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I like to say that when triggers come up, it is because there is an opportunity for healing and there is an opportunity for growth and for understanding the pain that is within you to really continue stepping more into your purpose and embodying that purpose to guide yourself and humanity forward and add value to humanity and create a positive impact in the world. So I will leave you with this for today, and also want to invite you and encourage you to full circle moment, face your fears of being seen and face your fears of being heard authentically as you are and unapologetically as you are. And the more you do it, the bigger the blessings, because you will find community that relates with your message and with what you are sharing and how you're adding value to humanity. And you will find your tribe, and you will find your purpose, and you will feel fulfilled. So I say this to you as I say it to myself. This is why these are the diaries of a journalist. It is my own personal diary, and I'm choosing to share with you because that is my mission, communicate and communication to the masses. And I have recently discovered that my main purpose, and that this took 34 years to get here. I'm about to be 35 August 7th, so I'm a Leo. But I was able to discover recently, thanks to AI and ChatGPT and Claude, and asking them to interview me and to ask me questions to guide me into a deeper level of my purpose and my mission. I recently discovered that my purpose in life is to create safe spaces where truth can flourish. And when those safe spaces are created and truth can come to light, we are able to embrace that truth and hold it in ways that takes tender care of it to allow us to change and transform and become better versions of ourselves, and therefore leave the spaces and the communities that we are tending to better than we found them, and leave the relationships that we are in or that we are in dynamics with better than we found them. So for me, my intention with this first video is also my most challenging relationship right now, which is my mom. And how can I tend to her with more love and care and compassion, because she is also my greatest teacher. And she is a true queen that loves me unconditionally and has been here for me. Even when I have been the worst versions of myself. So, Mom, if you're listening, I love you so much. I hope that you receive this with all the love and care that I have for you and that I oftentimes don't know how to express. I want to be more loving with you. I want to take better care of you and show you how grateful I am to have you as a mom and to have the privilege of being able to wake up every single day and still love you because you're here and because you're alive. And I'm gonna tear up because she's my everything. She's my angel. She's also my biggest trigger. And I'm so proud of us for how much our relationship has transformed over time, the difficult conversations that we've been able to have with each other, and how much we've witnessed each other's growth, and how much she is my number one fan and believes in me so deeply and is so happy and proud anytime that I tell her I'm going to record a video or record content or, um, because she knows that this is my purpose and she knows that this is my gift, communicate. So I love you, Mom, so much. And yeah, welcome to the Diaries of a Journalist. I'll leave you guys with that.